Good morning, everybody that's joined us so far. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to join me this morning. It's been a little while since I've personally done one of these, so I'm quite excited to chat to you all about internal auditing and how we can help you with that through our system. I'm just going to give the last few stragglers a couple more minutes to join us, and then we'll get started. Just while waiting for them to join, I do have a couple of polls I'm going to pop up on the right-hand side. So just while everyone who's joined so far is waiting, if you could just reply to those, that would be wonderful. And just as we go through, if you do have any questions at all, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I will come back to them at the end when I can. A member of the team is also going to be moderating in the chat as well, so they will also reply properly if you need anything on there as well. So I'm just going to pop a couple of polls on to get us started. The first one is just, do you currently use our audit module in any capacity whatsoever? That might be for your own internal auditing so far, or via the audit team that obviously we do external audits as well. So one more, and do you currently have safety audits completed by us, which I will pop in just a second. Everyone's still clicking. I'll give you guys a few more minutes. Okay, I've just popped another one on top. So again, do you currently have safety audits completed by us? Yes or no? Please feel free to complete the poll on the right-hand side. As we go through, you'll notice at the top hand side, you'll see chat, polls, and handouts at the top. So as we go through, when I share any free documentation, any resources you can download, if you just simply click handouts, you'll find all those there. And then obviously, please feel free to utilize the chat as well. I'm happy to reply and answer any questions on the fly as well. All right, lovely stuff. Right, so I'm going to get started. So this webinar specifically is about internal auditing, what that means and how you can do it. So yes, you can do an all singing, all dancing audit yourself, like what we would do if we were going to do an audit. However, you can do kind of lightweight audits and different types of assessments of your premises within Navitas to kind of capture any information that you want to capture to make sure all of your safety standards are in check. Right through to even if it's just maybe a brand standards audit as well. So hopefully through this session, I'll be able to show you what we can do and how we can help you with that. So to start off, we have the importance of safety auditing, and then how are audit findings assessed. So that's really good information about how you can make sure that you audit as effectively as possible, like you were a professional environment health officer, if you're not already. We're going to cover how audits are conducted. The safety team has very kindly provided a list of common audit findings and failures, so things that you can be aware of in order to make sure those things don't happen for your particular organization. I'll also be taking you through a couple of updates to our audit module in itself, with in particular the new action plan assigning feature. So those of you who have used the audit module before would know that whenever a problem is found during an audit, the action plan is assigned specifically to the site rather than an individual. So what we've done is we've added a new enhancement which allows you to assign it to an individual or a number of people specifically. And on the action plan report, they will also be listed as the person who needs to complete that action. And they will also receive a notification specifically as well to tell them that they've got that action to complete. And then finally, we have some Q&As that people sent over ahead of the webinar. But as I said, feel free to pop anything in the chat as well, and I will answer those at the end. Right, let's get to it. So what is an audit? I'm assuming everybody knows what an audit is, but yeah, it's a comprehensive evaluation of your operations, and it can be an audit of anything. So it doesn't just need to be food safety. It could be food safety, health and safety, fire safety. It could be brand standards. It could be anything you like. And I think a lot of people, when they hear the word audit, they're like, oh my God, an audit, what? It sounds terrifying. in the system, if you want to call it checks or something like that, we can rename the module as well. We know that sometimes when we say to people who are using a system, oh, do you want to conduct your own audits? Sometimes it's a little bit scary, but basically it's a checklist with bells and whistles on it. So we can also rename the actual module and what we're doing to make it a little bit more friendly if anybody was a little bit concerned about being audited per se. But what we're trying to do is basically make sure everything is correct and accountable. There's no issues, and then if there are any issues, we're capturing them, make sure there's a record of them, and then ultimately doing something about it. So although in the kind of standard sense of the word, who can conduct an audit should be someone who is competent, has the necessary skills and experience and knowledge and understanding of the operation to do so. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be a food safety expert per se or a health and safety expert. So anybody who is conducting an internal audit can basically follow a prescriptive checklist in order to capture the information you need. So as long as that audit template's been created by someone who knows what they should be looking for, those templates can make it really easy for them to complete. If you are conducting things like external bodies, obviously you've got things like the BRC and SALSA, maybe looking at kind of more specific requirements. But again, for the purpose of internal audits, they don't need to be as fancy as a full normal audit. And I think that's one of the things that people, when they start using our audit module for self-auditing, they try and do a full audit. You really don't need to, especially if you're getting audited by us. The whole point of it is it's just like keeping on top of everything. You don't need to do a full audit because we can do that for you. So what's covered in an audit? So anything you like is a golden rule of this question. So safety audits can be fully inclusive of food safety, allergen management, health and safety, and can be broken down into those particular subject areas within an audit. Or if you want, you can do an audit just for health and safety. Or, for example, some of our clients who have leisure facilities, you might just want to do a check on your pool plant equipment, for example. You can really be as specific, as short, as long as you want to. And then the great thing we always try and recommend as well, your brand's very important to you. That's what people recognize. So we always recommend including some brand standard questions as well. Things around customer service, quality, even visual conditions when your customers are visiting your site. It's really important to audit those things as well, because they're the things that are going to make a first impression to your customers, and these are things that we can check to make sure they are in check. And again, how much and how detailed your audits are completely up to you, and it really depends on the size and scale of your operation as well. So how do we assess audit findings? So audits are typically follow a numerical scoring system where each question is assigned a possible score and points are deducted with the non-compliance or defects are added. However, we've got quite a lot of different ways we could do auditing, and that's one of the benefits of the Navitas audit module is over the circa 35 years we've been operating, we've added so many different options for how you can audit yourself, different scoring outcomes to make it as easy as possible. And I have some really good recommendations about how we can do some internal audits, which are not necessarily as prescriptive in terms of scoring, because it can get a little bit complicated for operations managers. However, if you are going to do a full normal audit, we do recommend you do a percentage outcome scoring model. It just allows more flexibility and allows you to identify questions which are have more severe consequences. So things like pest control would obviously be a critical fail should you find an issue, but something like a piece of paper was in the wrong place. It's a terrible example, but something very simple, which is it's not the end of the world. You don't obviously want to be giving penalizing people too harshly for things that are not an issue. So again, going on to that, we've got those key issues. So they're the ones that they absolutely must be complying with. And these can be categorized as critical or requiring immediate management action if they do fail. And what we can do is we can obviously build all that into the template to make sure they are highlighted. And as mentioned, they will have a higher score penalty. So if you do fail those, obviously it will have a more detrimental effect on your overall score. We can also, I don't know if everyone knows this, but we can actually build in scoring guidance to each and every question. So if you are doing internal audit, if you are an auditor, you'll obviously know what you're looking for, but maybe a member of your team might not necessarily know exactly what they should be looking for. So what we can actually do on the question itself, we put like a little eye symbol. When you open that symbol, it'll give you the scoring criteria of exactly how they should be auditing for that particular question. So it means that they know exactly what they're doing without you having to tell them. So that's a big recommendation if you're doing internal audits as well. Also, I don't know how everyone else feels, but I think it's a good learning practice for team members to also conduct an audit. So yes, typically this will be completed by a manager, but I think it's quite a nice practice if you actually nominate on an ongoing basis different members of the team to go around with the manager and allow the team member to actually conduct the audit themselves. The best thing about that is that they can see exactly what a manager is looking for and therefore would have a better understanding about what standards they should be adhering to within the site. So again, I think that's great for learning and helping their development. And if they know what they're looking for, they know what they need to be doing moving forward as well. So I do highly recommend that too. So how are audits conducted? So this is a really great tip from Kirsty. So methodology is very important. If you go in just kind of scattergun, looking everywhere, where can I do the audit? What do I need to be looking at? It's very easy to miss things. And yes, an audit template can be very prescriptive to help guide you through. But when you think about building your audit program, it's always a good idea to have a bit of a flow. So in the example of a catering facility, you may want to follow the food. So if you start from a goods in process / delivery right through to counter service, final service, that will make sure that you cover every single touch point. So when the food arrives, is all the checks correct how they should be? Is everything being conducted safely when you receive the goods? Are those goods being stored correctly in the fridges and freezers? Are the temperatures correct within the fridges and freezers? Then right through to when you do a new production of any food, is everything being decanted into correctly stored receptacles? That's a big word for today, isn't it? Is all of the kitchen equipment color coded, so it's raw separation from cooked goods, etc., etc. So if you follow that journey from start to finish, you're more likely to not miss anything critical. And then if you structure your audit template in that way, it makes it really easy for the auditors to be completing it as well. And a prime example, if you wanted to use it in a different setting, so although that's a food option, let's say you run a hotel, for example. I know there's a couple of our hotel clients on this today. You could follow the guest experience. So when they first arrive at your hotel, going through lobby, reception, checking in, up to the room, entering the room, and then conducting themselves within your premises and maybe going to a restaurant, maybe using some of your leisure facilities. If you follow their journey as well, that's a really great example of how you can do the same sort of idea outside the realm of food safety, but also health and safety. A prime example for fire safety is doing fire safety checks and following evacuation procedures and how they're designed. You can actually follow the same evacuation procedure within an audit template to make sure everything's correct and all the signage is there as well. So again, really helpful tip. Follow, go with the flow, follow the food, follow the process that your customer's doing, and that'll make sure you cover everything. Just reference for how we would do an audit. Again, audit however you like, but what we found most effective is to do more of a coaching approach. As we know, nobody likes being told off. Nobody likes being criticized. Nobody likes being analyzed. So what we try and do when we do our auditing, we're very much focused on coaching the customer, coaching if there is an issue. So we'll speak to them and go, hey, you haven't done this. This is why you need to do this, and this is how you do it. And we'll even go to the extent of like, let's get that fixed now while we're here. And what that means is we've addressed the issue on site at the time. We've not just assigned an action plan that they've reviewed at the end of the day and gone, oh no, we've got to do that. We've actually addressed the problem in the moment. We've explained why that's a problem and then empowered the person who we've spoken to fix that problem at that moment in time, if they can. So what this allows us to do is that, hey, we're not just here secretly criticizing you. We're here to help you. We're here to support you. And ultimately, this is what you need to do to make sure that you fix that problem for next time. And ultimately, it means there's no surprises on the audit template. There's nothing worse than getting your audit back and going, oh my goodness me, why is there so much stuff in here that I didn't even realize? So that means there's no surprises. They know what they've got to do. And most of the actions, if small, are already addressed before they even do it, which makes them completing their action plans really quick. You can also add questions in the conversations. So again, you could delve more in more detail into the questions that are on there and what the impact of food safety can be. And even within our audit templates as well, if there's something that is missing from the question set, So instead of you just completely ignoring it, what we can do is we can actually add a free text box so you can actually type in some additional findings as well. So again, if you do an operational audit and you want something which is quite lightweight, but you don't want to miss anything that could be important, just simply add or ask us to add a free text box onto that template as well. So if you are having conversation, you can capture stuff that might not necessarily be already there as a question. Acting on findings and implementing quick fixes is really important. A lot of time, some of the issues we find are very small and minor. So rather than wait to the end, just can fix now, then it's done. And ultimately, you can see on the audit report what those issues were to make sure that don't happen again as well. Okay, so external nav for safety auditing. So when we conduct an audit, we will carry out a short opening meeting to set out timings, expectations of the day, just so everybody knows what we're going to be doing, how long we're going to be there, and what we're going to be looking for. We will complete a full walkthrough of the location, following that flow process, making observations, questions, and make sure everything is in line with your policy and also legislation and everything we will see. But we also undertake things like technical checks as well, such as probe calibrations. We also can do things like dishwasher temperature checks and things like that as well. We complete a full review of all associated documentation. So this is why we always bang on about have your food safety management system in check. And that's why we really recommend having a digital system. If you are still using paper is terrifying. It goes everywhere. It gets greasy. You lose it. It gets wet. People don't do it. People are fraudulent with it. If you have a digital system, it means there is no chance that anybody is going to accidentally forget something. And if they do forget something, it gets flashed straight away in the system. So you know it needs to be done immediately. You don't lose anything. You can access the reports anywhere. And ultimately, you're not going to be able to falsify those records because everything is time stamped, everything is date stamped, and everything has a digital signature to make sure that they've done it. So they can't do all of their cleaning schedules on a Friday for the entire week, for example, because the system does not allow that. But when we're doing auditing, we will be going through that paper. So if we don't have a digital system, make sure that everything is a good working order for our team to look through that. And what we'll usually do to finish the audit is complete a short closing meeting just to debrief on the key findings and identify and provide the audit outcome as well, just so they're aware. Some of our clients also like us to give an example audit score. So if they did have an official audit, what do we think they would get out in terms of their food hygiene rating? So obviously 0 to 5, or in Scotland, obviously it'd be pass or fail. So we do that as well. However, your internal audits don't need to be as comprehensive as that, as we've already discussed. So again, a great thing to do with those is great to just provide a fresh pair of eyes each time. So a manager can see what's going on, they can make changes. So when you do get an external audit, whether from us or from an official, from the FSA, for example, you're on top of everything already. So you're not just waiting for that official audit. Again, we can ask other members of the management team to conduct the in-house audit or do it on a rotation so everybody gets to see what's going on. Likewise, I mentioned before, really great idea to bring any team member into that process. It's great for their learning and it's great for them to understand. Please ask loads of questions to test your team's knowledge. That's something an auditor would ask as well. So don't go in silent. You know them better than anyone, so you should feel more comfortable than anybody asking them questions. So feel free to test the knowledge. Anything that don't know, that's a great training opportunity to make sure that they do know it, and then that's something you can implement. Test your own due diligence systems as well. So what you've outlined within your policies, do these match your organization? So is this correct? Are we missing anything? Do we have any gaps? Is our HACCP correct? Have we covered everything that we do? Make sure you kind of look at everything end to end to make sure everything is covered. And if there's any gaps, then that's something you need to address pretty quickly. And again, don't be afraid to report non-compliances. Again, at Navitas, we're not about finding fault, we're about finding issues, but then also resolving them. There's no point ignoring a problem and then coming back to it at the end of the day and just being like, oh, yeah, we'll pretend we didn't see that, or pretend we don't want that. Reporting non-compliances is so important because unless you report them, they're not going to get fixed. So fix the problem now and you won't have the problem in the future. So really encourage people to not protect their friends, as harsh as that does sound. Let's fix the problem and it won't happen again, and then we'll all be safe moving forward as well. So some common findings. So these are kind of key issues, and these are the most high risk areas that we find on a most common basis from all the audits we do. We do thousands and thousands and thousands of audits, and these are the ones that come up regularly. So food safety, and those of you on the call that encompass the food safety kind of area, I don't know if this will be a surprise. I think this is quite standard practice, or kind of a standard issue most people seem to face. Poor stock rotation and food labeling is normally the biggest issue that we find. So either as part of the process, when any new goods come in, they're not putting them behind, they're bringing the old stuff to the front and checking the dates. Often people just shove stuff in the fridge and freezer. We know when you're getting goods in, you're trying to open for the day, it's always a bit manic. But it's really, really important that you rotate your stock to make sure that the oldest is at the front and then the newer stuff is at the back, and checking those dates to make sure that you're only going to be using stuff that's in date as quickly as possible. Why is this important? Obviously, you don't want to be serving food that's food that's out of date, but also you don't want to be unnecessarily wasting food. I've done it in my own fridge. I've bought two things. I've popped them one on top of the other and realized that the one underneath that I've missed had a earlier date than the one on top, and I've had to waste that item. Very wasteful. It's costing you money unnecessarily, and that can just be avoided by proper stock rotation. The other thing is around food labeling as well. So obviously, if you are providing food to the consumer, you need to comply with PPDS requirements for Natasha's Law, and making sure that all of your ingredients are highlighted with the allergens highlighted in bold. But generally, food labeling tends to be not as it should be for what we find. Even things like day dot labeling doesn't tend to be done as effectively as it could be. So if you are producing anything for batch cooking, you should be putting a day dot label on there to say what the item is, when it was produced, what's the shelf life, and everything that's in it as well. And that's going to help tighten up your allergen processes and ingredient processes as well. But most commonly, it's always stock rotation and food labeling where we're finding the most issues. Over to health and safety. So health and safety is an interesting one, but usually it's things around unmanaged slips, trips, and fall hazards, such as wet flooring from leaking equipment and trailing cables. Leaking equipment is quite a biggie, certainly around kind of sink areas or kind of cooking things, or even air conditioning units that tend to drip, especially if you've got a shiny surface floor. They become very, very slippy, especially at the minute. The UK obviously decided to have some summer finally. So obviously aircon units are on, and there's obviously a high chance there's going to be some kind of water lying around from air conditioning units. So it's really worth checking those. Wet floor signs are fine, but obviously we need to be having a regular checks to make sure if this is a known issue that your teams are regularly checking for any slip hazards that can be caused. If ever you look at anything health and safety, the number one health and safety issue is slips, trips, and falls. That's every single year that always comes out on top. The last thing is trailing cables, especially if you run a leisure center. So gym equipment, make sure that all your cables, especially if you're moving things around for different classes, trailing cables are number one things that people tend to trip over. In hotels, housekeeping teams, when they're doing things like hoovering, cables tend to be all over the shop. So making sure that those are not trailing unnecessarily and causing a risk hazard there. Again, very, very common, but also very common sense. But it's just something that if you pop it into your checklist, if you put it into your policies and really police that, it should start to reduce your slip, trips, and falls hazards. Fire safety. So fire safety, obviously, if you've done a full fire risk assessment, will identify lots of things, but there's things you can do just as a regular audit as well. What we usually find is around things like poor housekeeping. So things that leading to storage of combustibles and heat sources such as electrical distribution boards. So we often find hazardous chemicals next to things that could be kind of a heat ignition. Don't recommend that. That's asking for some serious trouble there. But also things like going back to kind of the cable example as well. So improper cables that are damaged with exposed wires that can obviously get hot and cause issues. That tends to be what we find is the most high risk area. And that's across the board in kitchens, in hotels, general housekeeping, general areas. Those sort of things tend to be missed or tend to be ignored. I think people see anything electrical or things like heat sources and everything combined, they tend to just leave it to an electrician. But we do really encourage any of our customers, if they see an issue, please report it. And if it is a maintenance team member that needs to do it, at least they know about it. So it's everybody's responsibility to do that. And then finally, around leisure, so water testing out of the parameters with no corrective actions evidence. So water testing is really, really important. Usually, you need some form of trained member of your team to do this process. And what that often means is that not everybody can do it. So make sure you've got enough staff trained on how to carry out water testing. Make sure it's on a regular basis. And if somebody is on holiday or not available, make sure you've got someone to go in and do those tests. That is really, really important. But that is our most kind of common findings whenever we do audits. So if you think of your own internal audits, these are things that should be probably top of your list. Other things that kind of do come up, not quite as prolific as the first one, but things you need to be aware of. Obviously, food safety, no hot water or significant drainage issues. We'd like to say that hot water should be commonplace, but we do find it a lot. There's no running hot water, which is quite a big issue. Unmanaged pest activity. So some people don't have any pest control at all. So even though there's no evidence of it, there's nothing there to potentially prevent it should that ever occur. That's something you really want to watch out for. Cross-contamination or poor allergen management. So a lot of people think cross-contamination when it comes to raw and cooked items, but also there's a big thing around ingredients as well. And cross-contamination from them. So if you are providing your customers with nut-free options, you need to be very careful about what you are handling within your premises, where those are segregated. And we do really recommend, if you are trying to do both, speak to a member of the Navitas safety team about your policy, your procedures, to make sure that your premises is able to truly offer that without any risk. I think most people would have probably seen the recent story of, I believe, it's a footballer. Was on the way to Germany and has just had a big allergen reaction to, I think it was cashew nuts that were contained within an item of food he ate on the flight, despite the staff members repeatedly telling him that there was no nuts within his item. So allergen management is so important. You really need to make sure your teams are on it when it comes to that. There's nothing worse than being put in that situation, and it can be easily avoidable. And then obviously, a bit like before, you've got the systematic failure at managing use-by dates on food. So again, anyone who's ever worked in a retail store, in a food store, you know, date management, you've got to go around the end of the day, make sure all of the dates, out-of-date food is removed from the shelf, et cetera, et cetera. So again, there's often something that's in the eyes of a lot of team members and not a priority over other things, and these are things that can get missed. So it's really, really important to keep tabs on that. Health and safety. So again, it's any findings, observations that could lead to risk. So this is where things like your near-miss reporting is really important as well. So we do really encourage that within our instant module and instant templates. Near-miss reporting is so important because it's better to identify risk before something happens than to only report it when something's already happened. So really encourage and even incentivize your teams to do near-miss reporting, because that'll be things like identifying defective equipment. So prime example, and I personally have been in a situation with an unguarded meat slicer. The actual safety guard, I worked in a deli, and the guard had cracked, and I was slicing like this, and then half the guard fell off. And luckily, I didn't. If I'd been doing it any differently, my hand could have gone straight into that blade. So stuff like that. If someone had reported that, okay, probably me in this situation, I was young. That would never have happened, because I said, hey, this safety guard's got a crack in it. I'm concerned that it's not safe to use. It might come off, etc., etc. That piece of equipment could have been fixed. It would have never broken like that, and I would never put myself in a risk where I could have sliced my fingers off. I kind of like both my hands, so I would rather not have 3 fingers less. So again, near-miss reporting, really important. Again, just like the auditing, we're not here to blame. We're not here to catch anyone out. It's better to identify a problem before it becomes a problem, than obviously the other side of the coin when something's actually happened. Fire safety. So again, the effective detection systems. So that's why it's very important to keep doing your fire safety checks, make sure everything's working how it should be. Is your emergency lighting working? That's really important. And again, going back to the reference of the flow. So if we look at the fire escape routes follow that through on your audit. So if I'm in this room, how do I get out? And make sure there's no escape routes that are blocked. So common things that block escape routes is things like when people get deliveries, is the fire door exit should never be obstructed. If your housekeeping team are doing their checks and they have their trolleys with all the stuff in, make sure that those trolleys are not blocking a fire exit or restricting access to anything. Those things are really, really important. And then finally, around leisure as well. So again, absence of pool supervisory arrangements. So you need to make sure that the pool area is always supervised, or an overall absence of safety management determined from multiple failures or non-compliances across the board. So leisure is a really interesting one because there's a whole host of different things, and it's such high risk. So you really need to make sure that you have a really strong process around leisure, chemical management, being supervised, etc., etc. And these are things you can make sure that are in a policy and also represented on a check that you can do on a daily basis, and a regular audit. We do recommend the leisure stuff in particular is checked regularly. And that goes right down to kind of equipment as well. So if you do run and operate a gym, checking that equipment is operational, working how it should be, and there's no issues, is really, really important. Okay, so why are audits important? I'll scan through this quite quickly. Obviously, it allows you to benchmark standards, identify key trends or patterns. So if you're regularly auditing, you can see what common issues are being identified. Within Navitas, you have the key issues report that will highlight that for you as well. And it allows you to put something in place, stop that from happening or occurring ever again. And obviously, ultimately, you're going to improve your safety standards across the board. So if you weren't auditing and doing regular checks, you wouldn't know this stuff, you wouldn't notice the trends, but actually by doing the auditing and just taking half an hour out once a week maybe, you can identify these problems and ultimately make your premises safer for everybody. And again, allows for continued improvement and identifies whether there's gaps in your compliance or gaps in your policies, your procedures, or anything in between. Just for reference, a little plug here. We actually provide a kind of a gap analysis service. So if you're not sure, you can ask a member of the safety auditing team to pop out to your site. They will do a full analysis of your premises and basically look for any issues and look across all of your processes, all of your procedures, training, and everything in between, and look at what you may be potentially missing. So that's a really great service if you just want a fresh pair of eyes to kind of identify any problems for you, and then we can obviously help you implement improvements as well. They allow for detailed action plans to be created with different priority levels. So again, those of you who are used to using the audit module will know that within the system, you can be as configurable as you possibly like. You can have any priorities you want. You can categorize different sections, and it allows you to make sure that those actions are completed and you've got that full traceability as well. And then all of the audit reports are created digitally, not having to pull anything together. And if you're using Navitas Insights, you can get those nice sexy dashboards as well, which means you're board report ready without having to do anything, which we all love that. And again, audits shouldn't really be done in isolation. So they form part of your organization's safety culture. And it's a way of demonstrating, especially if you're being audited by a third party, that you should have confidence in the management team. Because look, we're doing these regular audits to make sure everything is in place. So it's a really good practice. We really recommend it. And yeah, ultimately from this kind of webinar, don't be afraid to do it. Give the responsibility to loads of different people. It doesn't just have to be a senior member or even a health and safety expert within the organization. You can give it to anybody. And again, it's a great way to improve confidence about what you're doing in the business, what your safety standards are, and any problems are then quickly addressed. Right, so demo time. So I'm going to cover a few different areas. It's not going to be a full demonstration. So if anybody would like a more in-depth demonstration of the audit module, please feel free to reach out to your account manager and we can arrange this. I'm specifically going to be covering our new feature, which is the Assign the Action Plan feature. But I also have a little help sheet slide, this one here. So when people often ask me what type of scoring can we do in an audit and what's the benefit of it, we have so many. So what I've done is you may want to screenshot this or ask for a copy of this slide if you are thinking of creating different audit templates. But these are the scoring outcomes we provide. So your standard one is obviously percentage. Now you can choose your pass-fail percentages however you want. So you can have 85% or above tends to be a pass, This is what is standard for most of our clients. Some of our clients have a higher score. It's totally up to you. You can choose any scoring that you like. So that is the most standard one. Each individual question would obviously have a number of points assigned to it, depending on the severity, and ultimately the system calculates all that for you and then gives you a final score. Then we have brag. It's not that we're being arrogant. We have a brag score, which is blue, green, amber, and red. So blue is kind of what we'd class as our certificate of excellence. So when Navitas do auditing, if you score a 95% or above, or depending on the agreement we have with your organization, that's considered to be a outstanding audit. And that's typically where we would assign the blue score. And then you have green, so that's a pass, but not quite perfect. We have amber, which is kind of, there's some issues there. We're not severe issues, but we're not where we need to be. And then obviously then we have red, which is where there's quite a few issues that we need to address. Again, just like normal percentage, you can specify what your scoring criteria would be and what would be blue, green, amber, and red. And we can set that up as well. And the audit outcome will just give you the color. So if you prefer it to just give you blue, green, amber, red, the scoring outcome will provide that for you. So you have that option. We have something called CWS. So this was one that was made recently for a client, which stands for Celebrate, Watch, Support. This is quite nice for an internal audit. You don't have any of the kind of scoring criteria per se, but what it's basically doing is if something's excellent, you're going to celebrate it. If there's some issues, but not necessarily anything too untoward, you can have it as a watch. And then finally, if there's some real issues that you do need to address, you can then support it. And again, it's kind of a nicer, softer kind of approach for an internal audit. So we need to support that site, that location, etc., to improve. Specifically within this template as well, you've got quite a lot of options about how you can build the Celebrate Watch Support outcomes. So you can say how many support priorities would then, how many negative points would then equal a support, how many would equal a watch, how much would equal a celebrate as well. So you can be quite configurable about how you set that up. And I said it's quite a nice outcome. And again, it's going away from the kind of strictly scoring idea. And then similar to CWS, you have the CIP template, which is a compliant improvement priority. Exactly the same idea, just with some different wording and different outcomes. So improvement, again, not some issues we need to address, and then obviously priority, these are critical things we need to address pretty quickly. We have integer. So these can be, you either add points for problems or you can deduct points for problems. So again, these are quite good for things like spot checks. So an example would be, let's say your site has 100 points, and each time you find a problem, you can then deduct points. And different problems can have different levels of points. So again, similar to a percentage idea, but again, it's just adding or removing points to suit your preference. And then finally, again, also really great for ops audits. You can have met and not met. So again, if it's just something like a general check, so it could just be something like a hotel general manager check or a store manager check, not necessarily going into maybe the minutiae of detail around food safety or health and safety. It could just be brand standards. So has it met your brand standards or has it not met your brand standards? That's a really great outcome for that instead. So I would say, depending on the level of competency and kind of complexity you'd like to add to your audit template, some of the other scoring outcomes would be great for your internal audits. I particularly think the CWS, CIP, integer, and then the met not met are great options for just kind of standard checks and spot checks and things like that. We also have the option to do audit categories. So there's two ways we can do this now. So when you do your reporting, you can assign an audit type. So we have normal, which is kind of an audit we would conduct. So that's like a proper audit. Operations are typically anything internal. So if you want to identify them separately to your normal audits, we can categorize them like that. And on your reporting, you can filter very easily. Mobilization is when you've got a new site. We do this for our clients as well. So they're adding a new site, we'll do a mobilization audit, which basically makes sure everything's ready to go from day dot. Full audit is covering obviously all aspects of safety, typically what we would do. And then finally, other spot checks. They tend to be like more snappy, shorter, little checks. So again, they're great for the met, not met. So you can do quick spot checks. So a couple of questions, and again, you can categorize them by themselves and report on them independently from anything else. We also have some extra features as well that you wouldn't necessarily see in the audit template. It's kind of some clever things in the back end. So we have automatic repeat violation deductions. So if you are doing a monthly audit, we can add some scoring criteria that will automatically deduct additional points if that particular site has similar issues that keep cropping up. So let's say in a health and safety setting that they've not been providing the wet floor signs, and then you, in the first audit, you scored it a 5 out of 10 because they weren't in place. And then you've audited again, and it's still not been done. So you would still technically give it a 5 out of 10. What the system will automatically do is deduct additional points of your choosing, because then they've not made continual improvements. So you don't have to worry about this. You don't have to necessarily remember this. The system's really clever, and that'll do that for you. So these are some of the things we can build in the template that you might find beneficial. We can also do things like golden fail questions. These are great for things that are maybe not a health and safety or food safety faux pas, but might be something that's to do with your brand standards or something you're just really passionate about as an organization. So you can add a golden fail question, which means that they get highlighted independently on the audit report and in the summary. So you can see if you failed those particular questions there, you can see them identified within the end report. Critical fail questions, again, these are things like pest control, things that you absolutely must comply with. And what we do is make sure that any questions of that nature are highlighted as critical fail. So if you fail those, it fails the whole audit, regardless of the rest of your scoring. And then finally, we can also do things like colored priorities. So when you have a priority from all of your from your audit outcomes, we can actually provide a color coding to that as well. So again, red is more severe, and then green ones are more kind of less severe. So there's little clever things like that we can do. We've also just added the ability, we'll come to insights more in a second, but we've just added the ability to, in insights specifically, look at your different audit categories. So within an audit template, you can basically identify different sections however you want. So you can have brand standards, health and safety, but you can also go right down to things like utensils, etc. Could be a category in itself. And what we can now do is we can pull that level of reporting into insights, and you can actually see for that category across my entire estate and all my sites and locations, how have I scored for that particular area? So instead of you just having your audits in general, we can now go down a layer and really go into that kind of more minutiae of data. So if that's something, if you don't have insights yet, I'm going to come into it in a bit. If you do want to speak to us about it, please let me know in the chat or contact your account manager. And if you already have insights, want to get to that granular level of detail and reporting in insights, please let us know and we'll show you how we can do that. You can build the categories however you want as well. You're not stuck to any pre-configured options that we provide. You can call them whatever you like. So you've got that option. Right, what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to nip into the module and just show you the new action plan assigning feature. So I'm just going to share my screen. Right, hopefully everybody can see that. So if you're familiar, I'm sure most of you on this call are familiar with compliance. And what we can see here, this is just my little demo platform. And before we go in to show you the new feature, you can just see the different types of audits. There's a few examples here. So we have the categories talked about, so operations, normal, mobilization. So again, you can filter by these. So if you only want to look at your normal audits, you can do that independently from everything else, so things don't get messy. You've got your scoring. So again, if it's a scoring option, you can have that. If you're using the brag, it gives you the brag outcome. And something I forgot to mention, you don't actually have to have a score at all. You can have a scoring as none. So if you just want to do a check, but necessarily don't want any particular score to come out of that, you can just have it as none as well. And then you can also change the results as well. So these ones are obviously a pass because it's got a blue score, but you can have compliant, which is in the sense of the CIP one. And then you can have celebrate if you're using the CWS, and then you kind of fail as well. So again, loads and loads of options. Whatever works for you, please let us know. We can work around how you want to operate. And again, you're not restricted to anything whatsoever. Those of you that use Insights, obviously this dashboard is replaced by your Insights dashboard, but we can still pull that level of information through as well. So what I'm going to do is quickly show you how we can assign action plans to specific people. So in the past, you would just assign it to a site, and then anyone with the relevant access levels at that site would complete those actions. You could specify their name in the description box, but it didn't actually assign it to them per se. So what I'm going to do is just show what this looks like now. You can also do this offline as well. So if you are wanting to conduct audits, but you don't have very good internet connection, or you're whizzing about, maybe you're an outland bound place and you're in a forest or something, you can also use the compliance app completely offline as well. So don't forget you have that option. It's included within the subscription. So if you have the audit module, you automatically get the Navtest compliance app too. So let's talk about the categories before. So this here is a category. So you can actually say, how am I performing with cleaning across my estate, for example? So that's how you can get that level of minutiae of data into your insights reporting if you so wish. It also pulls into the standard reporting in the system as well. So let's say cleansing structural surfaces is not good. So I'm going to put no. Again, this one's a standard scoring. So we obviously can give it a score. We can give it the priorities. And remember, you can let us know exactly how many priorities, what you want to call the priorities, and how many days those priorities are as well. These are not fixed. You can have whatever you like. You can red flag for severe non-conformances as well, or for severe non-compliance. Good thing to mention, when you're doing internal audits, if they are a very standard and prescriptive template, you can actually have drop-down options. So instead of you having to free text type, or a member of your team having to free text type every single defect, every single recommendation, you can actually just have them built in automatically. So then anyone doing them can simply click them, and then it makes it really quick. If there's something that's there that's not, so for example, if they find something that's not in the dropdown, they can click other, and it gives them the option to free text type as well. So you do have that option. And again, they've still got the option to provide the details, and then they can provide the recommended actions, what they need to do to fix the problem, or again, click other if it's not there. And then we have this new option. So we can do this on specific templates if you like. It doesn't need to have to be standard across the board. So it's actually a flag we have on each individual audit template. And all you need to do is simply click this, and then you can just simply choose who needs to complete the action. So you can do multiple people or just one individual. So say if I just want Louise, I can just click Louise. But if I want Louise and David, I can choose multiple people. So let's just do Louise for now. You can then attach your evidence and everything as normal, and then add issues. So what will happen is when when this audit is published, Louise specifically will receive an email notification to say, hey, an audit has been completed and you've been sent actions to complete. So that means when Louise logs in, she will automatically see that, and it is then assigned against her name. So I'm just going to click save on this one. And again, just for ease of use, I'm just going to whiz right through to the end to show you what it looks like. Again, you can see here on food safety, it's automatically updated the score for me. This one, because that was not a critical fail question, it has passed the score because I've still scored over 85%. But again, that's why it's really important if you put those critical fails in there, because if that was a critical fail question for you, or an audit, a golden fail, that would obviously fail that question. Sign off the audit. Just FYI, sometimes we use this to get the site manager or responsible person at that location to actually sign it off to say they've understood the report. So this doesn't have to be signed off by the auditor per se, so you can use it in that way around if you like. I'm just going to submit the audit. So what would happen is now, Louise would have received an email to say an audit's been published and she's got action plans to complete. And then what happens is, on the action plan itself, you can see the question, the defect, any of the details, the recommended action, what the priority was based on those priority drop downs. It automatically then creates the action required by date based on the date on the priority itself. And then now you can see it's been assigned specifically to Louise. So if I go through into the options and she updates all of the information when she logs in, all of that will then be assigned against her. And then in your management information, if you go into the action plan report, you can then see all of the audits that have been completed. And if I click into this one and click view action plan, I can see here it's specifically assigned to Louise as well. So now we've got that specific reporting to show this was the issue and this is whom was responsible for completing it. Now, one of the questions we keep getting is that, oh, well, what happens if Louise is on holiday? Well, that's fine. That audit and that action will still be available against the site for somebody else to complete it. And when they complete it, it will have their name against it instead. So if, for example, you weren't aware that Louise was off, don't worry, it doesn't mean it's going to float around in the ether. Somebody else can still complete that action and simply state that they've completed it instead of Louise. And if you're not sure exactly who needs to complete it, so if you do have a very big site and it could be a number of people, you can assign it to multiple people at one time. And then as long as one of them completes it, that's how you will solve that issue. Just for reference, we have also completed that. We've also added that feature for the action plan assigning as well within incidents. So if you open an incident investigation, you can actually assign it to specific people as well. And again, the whole process works in the same way. So you can assign it to one person, multiple people, they'll get emailed about it. And again, it just tightens up kind of your processes and stuff like that. As I said, if there's anything else you want to discover, explore around audits, please reach out to your account manager. They'll be happy to help you, or any questions, obviously drop them in the chat as well, and I'll be happy to help. So I touched on insights a lot. So within the Navitas system as standard, you've got all of the different reporting, so like question analysis, key issue, action plan reports, and stuff like that. So that's giving you the binary information. So that's your Excel, what's happened, what's going on, etc., etc. But often when you're doing your things like board reporting, you need something that's a little bit more visual and kind of identifies trends. So we do have our insights dashboards that you can bolt onto your subscription. We currently offer insights for audit data, instant data, and some of our digital food safety modules as well. They sit within your system and can be assigned to specific users as you so wish. The biggest update we've just done to this recently is adding those audit categories. So on your audit performance, you can specify for, I don't know, let's use the kitchen utensils, for example, or cross-contamination or something. You can see how have I scored for cross-contamination issues across my entire estate, and actually see that audit data within that dashboard, in addition to kind of your standard pass-fail audits, or if you're going to talk about incidents, for example, you can see what your key issues are around incidents and who's most likely to be injured or who has been most injured, etc., etc. So if you are looking for that kind of fully branded, board report ready reporting, we can do that for you via Insights. You don't need to be a Power BI or data whiz or anything, as it's a fully managed service. You tell us what you'd like and we'll do it all for you, and pop that into your system. So again, if you're interested in anything like that, please feel free to reach out to the Navitas team via your account manager, and they can give you some more information on that as well. So we had a couple of Q&A questions that people sent us ahead of time. Feel free to put any additional ones on the chat. I will try and answer them as I go along. So one of the questions is, how often should I be conducting in-house audits? So it really depends on what it is. If it's a spot check, you might want to do that weekly. But if it's kind of a more fully rounded audit, there's nothing wrong with doing that monthly. So an hour a month to keep everything in check is probably a good rule of thumb, and that seems to be most commonplace for our clients. Obviously, smaller checks you can do on a daily or weekly basis, but certainly that more all singing or dancing audit once a month is probably more than enough. What sort of training should someone have in order to conduct an audit? So this, if they are doing something like a proper food safety, health and safety audit, realistically, they should probably have around a level 3 managing safety or managing food safety, health safety, food safety equivalent. They should really probably have a level 3, because at least then they'll know what they're looking for specifically. But if it's something that's not quite as kind of in depth as that, any appropriate training for like the on the job and their responsibilities would be more than sufficient. And again, it's a great opportunity to do some shadowing. So let a member of your team go around with a manager so they can understand themselves, and it's great for their learning and development. So how long do the audit reports last, or how long are they held within Navitas compliance? As standard, we keep them forever and ever and ever, until which time you wish to remove them or delete them. We often find that some of our clients like to call back on data from like 6 years ago. So it's totally up to you. But as standard, the retention policy will be indefinitely unless you specify anything else. So will an environmental health officer or health and safety inspector or anyone equivalent look for want to see my audit reports that I do myself? They might do. So if it forms, it forms part of your company's due diligence, and might help towards demonstrating your safety management. So certainly from a food safety perspective, if you are looking at the kind of category of like confidence and management, if they can see that you're regularly doing your own auditing and they can see that you're effectively auditing your sites to a really good standard, that's really going to help you with that. So again, they may ask for it, they may not, but having more things and more checks and showing you do more stuff is only ever going to be a good thing. Right, so I have a little solution sheet to pop onto the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop that and it will appear on the handout section. So this is basically a little solution sheet that just gives you an overview of everything I've kind of discussed today, all the different features and everything that you can kind of get from the system. So feel free to download that if you're interested. They will also be shared as a follow-up as part of this webinar for anyone who couldn't attend today. So feel free to share the recording of this webinar with your friends and colleagues. But again, that's on there to access. If you ever need to access any more solution sheets, we have a huge selection of them now for all the different modules, and they'll just give you that little bit of a insight into what we can do. I'm also just going to pop on a question about if anybody would like to discuss anything I've discussed in a bit more detail. So please let me know if you'd like your account manager to specifically reach out to discuss safety audits and the audit module in more detail. So this might be, if you've already got the module, it might be looking at the different scoring criteria. It might be looking at doing more stuff around adding additional templates. It might be things like insights, or just even right down to your policies and procedures. If you're looking for more information about any support whatsoever, even if it's a more in-depth demo on how to use the system, the offline app, please let us know so we can kind of prioritize reaching out to you as a follow-up. Right, and then we've got a couple more handouts if you're interested. So we have some inspection checklists. So I'm just going to pop them onto the screen as well. So we have a food safety inspection checklist if you're interested in that. And we also have a health and safety audit template as well, which you're more than welcome to download and use as you so wish. We've got a couple of blogs as well. So we've got a role of tech in health and safety auditing. We've got one on food safety audits and how to prepare, and then what are internal audits. I won't share the link specifically on here because don't want to overwhelm you with a million resources right now. But if you do go to the Navitas Safety website in resources, you can see all those blogs in there as well. If you want to grab yourself a cup of tea and peruse at your leisure through those blogs, the resources section is a really great place on the website. But I think that is it from me. So thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you giving me your time this morning. As mentioned, this will be recorded and you can share with anybody else if you so wish. And I'll be happy to follow up with any questions if you want to email me directly later or your account manager. So thank you again. Have a lovely day and enjoy the sunshine. Hopefully it's sunny where you are. Bye, everybody.